What's going on YouTube? Y2Cam back with another video, and today I want to talk about that garbage state of play that Sony had. Matter of fact, that'll be for another video. Let's talk specifically about Final Fantasy VII, the remake. Now, the main problem with this game is simple. They're stretching the hell out of this game. By the time this whole Final Fantasy VII remake thing is complete, you'll probably be at least $200 to $300 in. You'll pay the price of a console by the time this game is actually supposedly finished. And this is the problem with the gaming industry. These companies will milk the hell out of these games because you'll buy it. The moment Cloud plopped up on that E3 screen back in the day when the PS3 was announced and the crowd went crazy. A little bit before that, matter of fact, those Final Fantasy DVD movies, those CGI movies, the fact that people went crazy over those shows Square Enix that they could just keep selling this packaging Final Fantasy stuff and selling it to you guys over and over and over and over again. And I don't even know if we've reached the apex because they've shown us that they will continue to milk this franchise. Get this, let's get this. This is supposed to be a remake, and they padded the hell out of Midgar. I don't want to hear what nobody says saying that it's fleshed out. No, it's not. It's padding. It's filler. It's stuff that doesn't matter to the story. They give you a shell of the story and pad the rest of the game out with filler and say this is part one of an entire game. Mind you, we got the full game on PlayStation 1. And I don't want to hear about how, graphical upgrades make it harder to make one game. Stop it. We've played Grand Theft Auto that takes you to multiple locations. We've played Red Dead Redemption that takes you to multiple locations. If they wanted to, they could slice it up and say, well, this area, the snowy area in Red Dead Redemption is one full game. Red Dead Redemption 2. They could say this is one full game. And then when you leave that area, this is another full game. And oh yeah, by the way, the online is a whole separate game. Stop it. Stop making excuses for a company milking, nickel and diming you, milking a franchise until it's done. That's what they're doing. They did the same thing with Kingdom Hearts. They constantly got you on the hook for another game. You beat one Kingdom Hearts, a secret cutscene will show up, and there'll be a mysterious character popping up or some more plot exposition that you didn't expect to be there. And now you have to go buy a Nokia 1100 in order to play the next story that's this time is so integral to the plot, just like the one before that was so integral to the plot. And it's just they've gotten down, right? Their nickel and diming process to where they can keep selling you games over and over again. It's gotten to the point where now they're selling you the same game repeatedly in slices. If that's not nickel and diming, I don't know what is. And the fact that now look, I'm not here to beat up on Square Enix fans, Kingdom Hearts fans, Final Fantasy fans, because this is the game industry as a whole. And this is, that's just how they conduct things. They do the same thing to 2K fans. They do the same thing to Madden fans, Street Fighter fans, Call of Duty fans. All these games that come out, they nickel and dime you in some way. And this is Square Enix way of nickel and diming customers. There's no reason why Final Fantasy VII Remake at the most should have been two releases. Two releases. They could have gotten away with saying, you know what, this game is so big and we put so much detail that we have to split it in two releases. Sorry about that. The second half will be out in 2021. People would have been okay with that. But because this is such a beloved game, people put this on a pedestal. And by the way, Final Fantasy VII is not all that. I'm sorry, it's not all that. Final Fantasy VI is a better game, but I digress. At the end of the day, they said, how much can we nickel and dime this fan base? Because they love this game so much, they'll buy anything. And that's what's happening. They're selling you another package. Now you have to have a PS5. And this is where Sony comes into play. Because, like in my other video, Sony should have waited until Christmas time of this year where they had enough units and enough games scheduled to come out in a certain amount of time. Because if you haven't heard the news, Gran Turismo, the new one, just got pushed back. That's a problem. So many games are getting pushed back, and they don't have a heavy hitter game to bank on. That's why they put Spider-Man Miles Morales on the PS5 instead of it being a DLC. Instead of not a standalone game, but a DLC for Spider-Man, PS4. So now they have to bank on the Final Fantasy VII remake. Why do you think they kept it for last? Because all those other games they showed on there were no interest. None of those games they showed in the state of play justified having a PS5, having to fight through bots, having to stand in line, having to pay resale price, which I'll never do, but having to pay resale price in order to get your hands on this game. That's a problem. None of these games warrant the excitement and fever for this console. None of the games they showed justified that. They just shut down the Sony Japan studios. So it's clear to me that less games are coming out, and it's a lot to do with COVID. COVID has slowed down production on the console. COVID has slowed down game development. A lot of people are working from home, and it's just the fact that a lot of companies are losing money, so they're cutting their losses. No matter what game company tells you something different, we're just readjusting. They'll never tell you outright we took a loss. But that's what they're doing. A lot of companies in general are losing money, so they're slashing here and slashing there. Some companies are outright closing down. And this is the game industry is no it's not exempt. Yes, they saw record sales because people are staying home, but for the future, a lot of games aren't being made or they need to be pushed back. But going back to this Final Fantasy VII, it doesn't make sense. So you mean to tell me that once they get out of Midgard, there's going to be a whole new game. And then but in between that's going to be a DLC for a character. And then they're going to have another area. And then they're going to have a DLC for a character. And then they're going to have another area. So we're looking at maybe 6, 7 games on top of the fact that they're somehow working on Final Fantasy 16 at the same time. How is that supposed to work? This game isn't going to be out or complete until the game console generation is over with. This particular generation is over. And then once they nickel and dime you for all those different slices of Final Fantasy VII, they're going to hit you with the Final Fantasy VII Complete Edition, where all the chapters are in one happy little compact disc that they're going to put out, and you're going to be looking stupid. That's what always happens. And the fact that fans are making excuses trying to say, well, this is just fleshed out. Fleshed out is a fancier term for filler. Fleshed out is a fancier term for padding. That's just what it is. Final Fantasy VII is the golden child to a lot of gamers. They can't do any wrong in terms of Square Enix, and they will continue to buy whatever crap they feed them because that's just what gamers do. They want to complain and talk about a cyberpunk, but they are the main problem with situations like this. So I don't want to hear about gamers in general complaining about certain things happening because you roll over, you bend over for whatever game that you like. And it may not be Final Fantasy VII. It may not be Final Fantasy. If Grand Theft Auto started to do something similar, a lot of gamers will just take it because they want to play GTA. A lot of gamers have been taking it because they want to play their favorite game. And that's the problem. These game companies can get away with it because we allow them to get away with it. I have not bought a PlayStation 5 because there's no reason to buy a PlayStation 5. There has not been one game that they showed me that is a guarantee must buy for the console and for me to purchase that game. Deathloop looks nice, but that's something I feel like I can wait. A lot of these other games they show on the release of the PS5 or the initial trailer to hype you up to buy the PS5 have been pushed back or delayed. Pragmata looked interesting, even though we don't know what it's about. 2023. That's when that game is coming out, allegedly. Because we know for sure that a lot of games that were announced when the PS4 was announced never came out or saw the light of day. We just know that's how the game industry is in general. Some games get announced and some games, whatever, behind the scenes don't come out or they could never get it to work or, some things get quietly canceled. That's just part of the industry. There's nothing wrong with that. You would like for them not to announce things so early, or you would like for them to kind of keep working on certain things because you wanted to see how it turned out. But for whatever reason, games get canceled. That's part of life. So a lot of these games that we saw initially in the PlayStation 5 reveal, when they showed the price and the look of it, may not never see the light of day. That's not saying that it won't, but I'm not buying a PS5 for it. Remember how many people bought a PS3 to play Final Fantasy at the time, Final Fantasy Versus 13 and Kingdom Hearts 3, and it never touched those consoles? Remember that? People bought those consoles, $600 down the drain because the game never came out, because they just stayed in development hell all day. Now, PS3 was a good console, but at the same time, it wasn't worth paying $600 for games that were never going to come out. At this point in my age, and this point of how long I've been gaming, I don't see the point or the need to buy a console off the promise of what games are going to be out. Because you can never expect what games are going to be out, especially now these days, where more and more game from the PS1. We'll just start there. From the PS1 to the PS5 currently, there have been a multitude of game studios either closing down, game properties never coming back out, or game properties being a shell of themselves. So there's no reason just to assume that certain games are going to be out because this is the PS5. And that you just assume that well, it's the new generation. We should be expecting a new game in this franchise. I'm just not with it. But in terms of Final Fantasy VII Remake, it should be called the Final Fantasy VII Drip because that's all they're doing. They're just dripping and, you know what I'm saying, drip feeding gamers slices here and there. And it looks like what they're doing is remaking all of the Final Fantasy VII properties. So the original Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus, the movies, who knows what else. They're all putting this in one giant game. And that's just an excuse to nickel and dime you. They don't have to put in Dirge of Cerberus content or characters. That's not what the Final Fantasy VII game was. They don't have to put in Crisis Core characters. They can just show you flashbacks. They don't have to do any of this stuff. But they're doing it because they know anything with Final Fantasy VII slapped on it, anything with Sephiroth or Cloud on the cover, gamers will lose their mind and run out and buy it. It's the same with Kingdom Hearts. This is what they do. And I'm not with that. You know, someone has to be able to stand up. And now you need a PS5 to get this upgrade, right? You need a PS5 to get the HD pack, the 4K, the 60 frames per second. Wasn't this what the PS4 Pro was for? Weren't we promised 4K gaming on the PS4 Pro? Weren't we promised these things? But now the PS5 is, I know that the PS5 is more powerful, but weren't we promised these things? Y'all got to wake up, man. Y'all got to wake up and realize that these game companies are just here to just take money from us. These companies are not your friend. They're not your friends. They're here to take money from you. And the more we allow these game companies to get away with certain things, the more they're going to continue to do this. And it's going to get worse. It's already bad now, but it's going to get worse. And all they do is go back to the drawing board and figure out how can we do this still, but not have any backlash. They ease it in this time. They usually just shove it in, but you screaming and you holler. So now they just ease it in. They say sweet nothings in your ear, and then you let it happen. That's what anything as a consumer, you let it happen. That's the main goal for any company that wants to sell you something or try to take advantage of the consumer. They ease it in, and they just get you to let it happen. So, if you were smart, you would hold off on the Final Fantasy VII remake because it'll do you better because as time goes on, you have more chapters to buy that'll be more available, or you'll be able to get a deal on the entire package, Final Fantasy VII complete. But enough with me rambling, man. I just want to put out a quick video to let you guys know that you're being bamboozled and hoodwinked as always. But if you care that much about Final Fantasy VII, that you'll just give them whatever money that you have and throw it at them, be my guest. So leave a comment down there, in the nice little area. Let me know, are you going to buy the Final Fantasy VII remake? Are you interested in the Final Fantasy VII remake? And if you are not buying the Final Fantasy VII remake, let me know. Thumbs up, share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.